Hello and welcome to the Aftershock with Alex Morgan. I'm Phil Leyva, and we're here at PayPal Park after a 1-0 Leagues Cup loss for the San Jose Earthquakes against Tigres of Liga MX. Alex, your initial thoughts following the match. What do you think?
Well, the Quakes were never really in it, were they? They come into this game already at a deficit. They need a 2-goal victory to take them to the next round of the Leagues Cup. They've only achieved a 2-0 victory twice in their last 23 games. They have never achieved a 2-goal victory, as far as I'm aware, against Liga MX's team in any of the friendly games that they've ever had.
Not in recent memory, yeah.
Especially not against a team like Tigres, who are consistently one of the best performers in Liga MX. And then Liga MX score an early goal. I think it's a little lucky that they get that goal, but then the Quakes really don't have anything to do from there. So it was a deserved win for Tigres. I think they played their cards very well. They did exactly what they needed to do. They got the smash and grab, and they come away having exerted relatively little energy against the Quakes and moving on to the next round.
Right, and the Quakes really needed to get an early goal to even have an opportunity to get any points in this match, and they were unable to do that. I mean, they were pretty even from half to half, right? We had 8 shots in the first half, 9 in the second half. They really couldn't get things going offensively in terms of like taking advantage of those opportunities that they had, though they were able to create some opportunities throughout the match. I mean, there were some nice moments here and there, but we saw Cade Cowell get an opportunity. We saw Carlos Acapo get an opportunity, and they just weren't able to put those goals away to take advantage of those opportunities. So, I think a lot of fans right now are thinking, where do the Quakes go from here? They recently got the signing of Ayo Akinola, and, moving forward, it's going to be focusing on the league once again, as we had talked about before, right? Yeah. So I'm interested to see in the chat how folks are feeling about the Leagues Cup loss, whether the team should have put more towards the Leagues Cup, or if going back and focusing on the league is really what they should have been doing in the first place.
Well, I don't see how they could have put more into this tournament. They played their starting lineup in both games against the Portland Timbers and tonight against Tigres. If you look back at the beginning of the season, this starting lineup was the starting lineup essentially for the first 2 months of the year. And we're going to get to speak to Luchi Gonzalez in the postgame press conference. He's been popping in and out of frame, so I'm anticipating that he'll be coming shortly to help explain what he saw. But I don't think he was holding back anything from this tournament. They have a long enough break that they were able to play their starters tonight, knowing that they'd have a lot of rest before the MLS regular season resumes in 3 weeks' time. The issue tonight was just that Tigres are kind of the next level above them. Tigres, when they wanted to, they really didn't have any difficulty breaking down San Jose's back line. They got enough numbers in the midfield. They got the overlaps in the advantages on the right side, and they made them count. And then they were able to stay in a low defensive block and bunker and just to see the rest of the game.
And yet the Quakes did not get blown out in the match, even though Tigres was able to continuously break down the defense. We did see the defense of Tigres break down on the other side of the pitch as well. I mean, the Quakes did find their opportunities, and as I said, they just weren't able to take advantage of those opportunities. So I agree with you, Alex, in that Tigres they were the dominant team in this match, but the Quakes did have an opportunity to score a goal or two.
And I think that the Quakes came away with their dignity intact. At very least, they were not blown out of the water. They kept it to a 1-goal game. I'd be interested to see the XG, outcomes, but it felt like they were due a goal or two in that game because of the chance that Carlos Acapo had in the first half, because of the looks that Jeremy Abobasi had from the top of the box, because of the looks that
we had Tommy Thompson in the second half.
Tommy Thompson in the second half.
Acapo had the header as well. He had multiple opportunities. So, we could be talking about a different story here. Like if they had just put those opportunities away, we would be having an entirely different conversation.
And I genuinely think that the way that they were playing in the final third was decent. It was solid, and looks like the Tigres head coach is in the press conference right now, so we're going to skip that presser and wait until Luchi Gonzalez's presser, which should happen after that. But I think that the Quakes going forward, I was surprised by the volume of chances that they were able to create and the way that they were able to get in and get those cutbacks. They had a few solid cutbacks. I wish Jamin Moore were here to praise the way that they were getting those cutbacks, but they had chances in behind, and they were able to break down Tigres' back line, which surprised me, given that all Tigres had to do in this game was maintain a clean sheet and walk away with fewer than 2 goals conceded. I was surprised with the way that the Quakes were able to break them down fairly easily.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at a couple of these goals, I mean, Jamin had mentioned in the Slack chat that Cade Cowell's opportunity actually was a pretty low XG opportunity. And so we did see them at times, in front of goal. Although they weren't able to score, they did kind of keep themselves in the match. They did play toe-to-toe at times, although I don't know if it was a matter of just like cat and mouse, okay. Right?
Here's the thing, Phil. Cade Cowell's opportunity was a low XG opportunity because he shot from the top of the box when he realistically should have played the ball in behind for a capo or should have ran at his defender. That's what we missed so much about Jack Skane in this starting lineup, is someone who can run at the defender, lay the ball off to somebody, or beat them and take the shot. That's what Jack Skane showed against the Portland Timbers, showed in the MLS regular season for the last few months. And you could feel his absence out there for the Quakes. They were great at distributing the ball in wide areas, but nobody was really forcing the issue down the middle. And that's something that they could have been.
I take issue with that a little bit, though, because I think there were times in the match when Jeremy Ebobisse did really well, pulling back from the 9 position and receiving the ball, which is actually something that I think he's had difficulty with throughout the season in terms of bringing the ball down and controlling it with his feet and distributing. We saw a lot of that in this match. I thought he did really well delivering the ball out towards the wings. And there were certain times when he was the focal point of the offense here. So I'm looking in the chat right now. I'm seeing some folks are curious about Akinola as well. They're getting questions about Ayo. I'm curious as to what you think about his debut tonight, Alex.
Well, you've thrown 2 things at me here. I first want to respond to your first point. I don't think that Jeremy Ebobisse is the problem. Jeremy Ebobisse, I think, had a solid game tonight. He was able to get involved. He had a few shots from the top of the box. I think that the person who I was hoping for more from was Jamir Montero. And it didn't look like Jamir Montero was necessarily 100% fit. He's been out for a few weeks now. That was one of the main reasons why Jack Skane had been brought into the starting lineup in the first place. And he still doesn't convince me as a number 10 in Luchi Gonzalez's system, as the guy that Luchi Gonzalez needs to carry the ball forward, break lines, and be goal dangerous. And we didn't really see him get involved enough tonight. We didn't see in the way that Jack Skane has been pushing the tempo.
The quick change of possession moments where we really could have seen him more effective.
Because if you need 2 goals in this game, Luchi Gonzalez knew going ahead of time the Quakes would need to be on the front foot. They would need to be pushing the tempo. They need their 10 to be doing that. That's where that energy has come from. When the Quakes won 2-0 against Seattle, when the Quakes won 3-0 against Sporting Kansas City, the energy needs to come from the middle there, and they need to be high-intensity pressing. And I think they tried to do that, but weren't able to do that because Montero wasn't entirely reconnected with the squad yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that this has been consistent throughout the season. Like, this isn't anything new for the Quakes. It has definitely been a problem spot. I did, again, think that Jeremy Ebobisse was able to fill in some of that a little bit throughout the match, but you just need somebody quicker on the turn, right? When the ball is moving through the midfield, you need somebody who can just be quick on getting it out to the wings. You can be quick getting it to the top of the formation. Montero hasn't quite been that guy this season. I mean, we did see a couple moments where he was able to dribble out of pressure. I mean, Tigres pressed quite a bit throughout the match, and the Quakes were able to find their way out of that pressure, but it just wasn't enough to actually get anything into the back of the net.
Yeah, but there is, as you say, a new addition here in San Jose. Ayo Akinola making his debut, coming off the bench in the second half for the Quakes. And what interested me, honestly, it wasn't even Akinola's play. I think we kind of know what we're getting with Ayo Akinola. He's a bruising number 9 who is good at finishing in the box. He can get in dangerous spaces. He can get ahead on the ball. He can get his way in the far post and finish. He's a true finisher. He's kind of a late game super sub, a bruising super sub. You can put on a la Alan Gordon, a la Steven Lenhart, guys that San Jose Earthquakes fans know and love. Whether he's at their level is another question. He had an ACL injury a few years ago, and while he had a sort of really rousing kind of debut in Major League Soccer at Toronto FC a few years ago, the last few seasons he's not been goal dangerous. The idea here, which you can start to see tonight, is rehabilitate him, get him in a new environment, and make him goal dangerous again. And so I think we know what we're getting with him. And
was there anything that you saw tonight that was convincing for you yet, or is it still in that rehabilitation phase and there's a lot of work yet to be done?
Still in the rehabilitation phase, a lot of work yet to be done. But I think what really surprised me tonight, what made me hopeful, was not how he played, but the way he was used. Because he was used up top in a 2 at the top, in basically a 4-3-2-1, or 4-3-1-2, a 4-3-1-2, two strikers. He went up top with Jeremy Ebobisse, and I liked the way that they were playing off each other, and I liked how the Quakes were pressing with that 2 at the top, and I liked them having the option. It seemed to throw Tigres completely off their game. They didn't know how to keep possession when the Quakes brought in Akinola and completely changed up their formation, because we really haven't seen them been able to play with 2 number 9s like that, 2 true number 9s like that in a really long time. And teams don't know how to break that press with that formation yet. And that's going to give Luchi Gonzalez more options going down the stretch here. So I liked what I saw there, and I want to see him experiment more with that. My only concern is that it moves Christian Espinosa all the way back to a right midfielder role, a right wingback role, when in these late game situations, you really want him to be the one, on the counterattack, breaking the lines. Because Akinola, he has good, positioning, movement. He's got good size, aerial ability, but he doesn't have the pace anymore.
Well, let's talk about the counterattack for a second here, because late in the match, we did see a really effective counterattack that we haven't seen from the Quakes many times this season. It was Christian Espinosa who broke the lines deep within the defensive half for the Quakes, and he was able to get it up to the top of the formation. They had a really nice looking counterattack. Once it gets to Tommy Thompson, things kind of like slowed down a bit, but they had a really great opportunity there. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know how often we've actually seen that this season. Now, do you think this is a matter of just having more numbers up top and Espinosa playing behind, or what do you account that to in terms of like an effective counterattack, something that we haven't seen too many times this season from this team?
I think we have seen it plenty of times from this team this season. And what it usually involves is Christian Espinosa waiting on that halfway line, waiting for the ball in behind. I can remember very vividly just a few games ago, I can't remember if it was LAFC or Galaxy game. I think it was the LAFC win that the Earthquakes had, was when Jack Scan got on the ball in midfield, played a ball in behind for Christian Espinosa on the counterattack, and he scored a goal. That's an example of the Quakes counterattacking well. That happens when Christian Espinosa is up top on the halfway line waiting.
So what you're saying is Christian Espinosa can't do everything for this team.
He can't do everything for this team. He can't do everything for this team.
Well, he's either going to start the counter or he's going to be on the end of the counter, but he can't do both, right? Okay, so let's talk about other surprises in this match. What was it that impressed you about this team? They were able to hang in 1-0 throughout. After the goal, they made a few substitutions. Luchi made a few substitutions. He took a couple different approaches. You had already mentioned the 2-striker formation. Were there any player performances that stood out to you in this match? Anything positive going forward for this team?
I don't think we learned anything here that we didn't know about the players in the starting lineup. I don't think there are any particularly poor performances, but I don't think anyone stood out. I think the absence of Jack Skane stood out to me. The absence of somebody driving the intensity stood out to me. I don't think anybody had a particularly strong performance. I think I saw a few weaknesses is what stood out to me in the back line that makes me worry. And look, the Quakes aren't going to have to play a team with Diego Lainez and Gignac up top every week in Major League Soccer. But with that said, the way that Tigres were able to kind of create space in and around San Jose's box was problematic. And I think they really had Miguel Trauco's number this game. I think the biggest weakness in this game for San Jose was down that left side with Cade Cowell and Miguel Trauco, because Tigres were punishing them. That's how they score their goal, is they get Trauco to commit. They have the underlap or the overlap around the winger on that side, and then they just have numbers, and the Quakes weren't able to adjust. Trauco was caught out of position a few times. Cade Cowell wasn't giving him the support he needed. And then once they get in behind, they're going to have dangerous looks. And with poachers in the box like they have, they made them count. And so that was one issue. The other issue was the way that they were playing kind of off San Jose center backs, the way that they were playing off of Rodriguez, the way that they were playing off Tanner Beeson, and catching them off guard. They were able to kind of hover in those half spaces, hover right behind Rodriguez and Beeson and take advantage of them. And they were able to get the numbers there and have good movement, and San Jose really couldn't cope with that.
You know, there's already questions in the chat here coming up about Jonathan Mensah not being present in the lineup tonight. I'm wondering, you know, you're talking about some of the defensive woes that the team has. We've got Jonathan Mensah, we've got Nathan also as options in the center back position, but right now it's Rodriguez and it's Tanner Beeson. Just your thoughts in general about Tanner Beeson and Rodriguez pairing moving forward. I mean, is this something that the Quakes can depend on, or is it yet more defensive woes that we're going to see throughout the season? I mean, we definitely saw it here versus Tigres, but you had mentioned not every MLS team has players like Lainez and Gignac, right? Like those are certainly like really, really high quality players that you simply don't get too often in MLS. So the Rodriguez Tanner Beeson center back pairing, I mean, how confident do you feel about this going into the remainder of the league season?
I think it's good enough against most Major League Soccer teams. The defense hasn't been an issue for San Jose this season. They've been switching back and forth between Beeson and Mensah in that back line, and it hasn't really caused any major issues and any consistent major issues. My question is what happens in the offseason, because I really don't know right now. If you have Jonathan Mensah playing the way he was at the beginning of the season, 100% it should be Jonathan Mensah and Rodriguez in that starting lineup. But something happened with the disciplinary issue that Mensah had in May and April, and he has not looked the same since. He has not gotten the same chances since, and you get the feeling that he's on the outs here, and that he's not in Luchi Gonzalez's long-term plans at this stage, because he was a guy who they were expecting to jump into the starting lineup and replace Nathan after his ACL injury as the starter in that back line. And he's not doing that. And so now you have a question where, okay, you have Mensah, you have Rodriguez, you have Beeson, and you have Nathan at the end of the season, all returning. And the only one that's really locked down is Rodriguez, because he just got a new contract extension.
Right.
So then you're deciding between Mensah, you're deciding between Beeson, and you're deciding between Nathan. And I really have no idea who is going to be in the better long-term option for the Quakes heading into next season, because we don't know what Nathan's fitness is going to be. If he's going to be the player that he was when he went before he went out with that ACL injury. We don't know where Mensah's head is going to be at. If he's even got enough legs in him at his age to continue to be a reliable starter for next season.
It's a good point, right? Because when Jonathan Mensah came to the team, I mean, he came over from the Columbus Crew, and this seemed like a steal at the time, right? Such a good find for the front office, which it still is. This was a win for the organization. He provided so much defensively in terms of leadership and stature and the quality of the team, the way that they presented themselves in terms of their defensive posture. Like, it was so many, great things for the squad early on in the season. And yet there are so many question marks about where he is now. And I'm kind of wondering if there was something there that Columbus knew that the team just didn't know going into it. Right. So anyway, looking at the rest of the team, the midfield in this match, Cade Cowell, we haven't had an opportunity to talk about Cade Cowell yet. What's the reaction there for? Okay, we did mention the missed opportunities, but what do you think? Was he able to do some of what he did earlier this season in terms of creating space for Christian Espinoza, Jeremy Abobasi, or are we still, as a lot of folks in the chat have been saying, with the position that Cade Cowell needs to be sold as quickly as possible?
Look, I think I'm going to become a broken record about Cade, because when he was away with the US U20 team and when he was with the US men's national team at the Gold Cup, I really appreciated what he was able to offer for those teams as a second half substitute, playing in a more advanced number 9 position. The composure that he had, the confidence that he had, the willingness to take players on that he had. I really appreciated that. And it made me realize, holy cow, this is the kind of player who could get a transfer to Europe, who could get a $4 or $5 million transfer to Europe. That's just not the Cade Cowell we're seeing in San Jose. It's not the Cade Cowell
I'm just realizing right now, too, in my mind, like, I had very quickly placed him in that midfield position, thinking in a 4-4-2 sense rather than a 4-3-3, which is what Luchi often employs. So I'm like kind of right with you there, as I think like, I don't know if it's a matter of like the system that he's playing in here with Luchi with the 4-3-3 playing on the wing, or if it's a matter of like getting those opportunities to play a little more centrally, and maybe that's where he's more effective.
I think the answer is that it's a little bit of everything. And that I think the thing that at this stage of Cade's career would benefit him the most is a move to Europe, where he's in a new environment, a more challenging environment, where he's going to play with a new coach and a new system, and they're going to use him in different ways that will hopefully bring out the qualities that we've seen him have with the U.S. men's national team. So that's where I'm at on Cade Cowell. And then the question becomes, can Chris Leach get that deal for him? We know there's been interest and there's been offers for Cade repeatedly over the last few transfer windows. Can Chris Leach generate a good offer for Cade in this window so that he can move him out and bring in a marquee left winger? That is the player that the Quakes need to take that next step up. Because we saw, I think a lot of people might have been confused by the Akinola signing at first glance, because it's not necessarily the kind of big marquee player that the Quakes really need at this moment. He's a depth signing. We know he adds value to this team, but there's, and he adds another dimension
that this is something that we've talked about before, right? We talked about the lack of the powerful nine, Alan Gordon, Stephen Linhart, that we've seen in the past as another option, another dimension for the team. So I don't know that too many people are necessarily surprised by it. I think more so disappointed that it's not a bigger signing.
It's not the signing that I think Quakes fans have been expecting or wanting, right? Because they've been wanting that marquee player, and there's only a few weeks left in the secondary transfer window to get that done now. And there's a lot of pressure on Chris Leach. We had the opportunity, me and Jamin, to speak to Chris Leach, midweek and talk to him about his plans. He made it clear Ayo Akinola is not expected to start at the beginning, but he's a guy who offers this team a different look. He's a depth signing that they need, and that they're looking for the rest of the window, but it would essentially require a player going out to bring in that player going in. So the pressure's on him to get a deal for Cade, to get a deal for Benji, or to get a deal for somebody else, possibly Jameer Montero. You could get a lot of value out of him, possibly JT Marcinkowski. We haven't talked about it a lot, but there are definitely MLS teams who could use a starting quality keeper in goal, and JT Marcinkowski could have some solid trade value. And I think if you can trade JT Marcinkowski and bring in a really marquee number 9, if you find the right player, that's a worthwhile trade-off.
And yes, and the Quakes do have homegrown signing Emi Ochoa there in that position to kind of, play underneath Daniel or play behind Daniel if that should be necessary. I do want to take a moment here, though, because you had mentioned Ayo Akinola and that signing, to refer folks over to quakesepicenter.com and to check out on the YouTube channel. I imagine a lot of you are already with us right now. You'll see Colin Etnier has a breakdown of the Ayo Akinola signing, what it means for the team, how it works within the salary cap, how that deal was made, and what the prospects are for the future. So make sure you go check out quakesepicenter.com to see Colin's piece. Find it on YouTube. It really informed me as to what the Quakes were doing with this signing and what Ayo Akinola can do for this team, and gives a little bit more as to what his skill set is. So some of the things that we've already talked about, but just a little bit more depth. Anybody who's seen Colin here on the show or has followed any of his content before, you know that it's really great. It's really in depth, and it provides a lot of insight.
And the one thing that Colin mentioned that I think is absolutely spot on. Look, his entire analysis is great. Yep. He's the only person who can explain GAM and TAM to me in a way that makes it make sense in my head.
Yeah.
But the one thing that he brought up is that there's a connection between Ayo Akinola and the Earthquakes, and that is Ian Russell, who is currently San Jose's assistant coach with Luchi Gonzalez. He had been the coach of Reno 1868 FC for a few years. He's been around the San Jose Earthquakes organization a long time, and he was an assistant at Toronto for just a few seasons during Ayo Akinola's breakout season there. So this is, I think, very clearly an Ian Russell call. Ian Russell obviously would have been intimately familiar with Akinola's game. He would have known Akinola as a person, and would have been, I assume, pivotal to making that decision to trust Akinola and to believe that he has room for growth after that ACL.
And I like these kinds of loan deals, especially with the team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it's really good for the Quakes to have this sort of relationship with teams that are playing on the other side of the country, who are playing in a conference not necessarily within. So it's competitive with a team like Toronto FC. But to be able to, have these loan deals, I think is really beneficial for them moving forward. And they certainly have a lot of talent coming out of Toronto and their system. It looks like we have Luchi Gonzalez joining us.
All right, Coach, is this a frustrating loss that you got shut out at home, or is it the situation where it's not an MLS game, so you're not as frustrated?
I don't know if frustrated is the word, just, kind of sad for the guys because I thought our players left everything on the field. I'm really proud of them. Um, I thought we showed some high level concepts, ideas, play, combinations, pressing, against one of the best teams in North and South America, Central, North, and South America. So, yeah, it's disappointing not to get the result here home in front of our fans. And by the way, thank you to our fans. I thought they had amazing energy. There's a big Tigres contingency here, and it's expected with our communities that are very Latin American. So it just made a great environment, a great event. And I'm sure for all fans, it was a good game for them to see. But I'm part of our guys. I thought we pushed the game and until the very end, created chances to score. Didn't bounce our way. But if we keep showing that attitude, personality, that confidence to play, things will bounce our way in our league. So we're disappointed, and I'm sorry our fans were out of the League's Cup. We really wanted to do well in this cup. But I'm also proud of our guys. We left everything on the field, and we'll move forward. And congrats to Tigres. It's a very good team, very well coached, and we wish them the best.
Coach, when you see a team like how they present an attack, like Quinones, like Linus and Maniac, how difficult of a challenge they present to your whole team in general, not just your back line?
Yeah, no, we definitely highlighted that in the week's training and the video analysis. They have individual talents that can change a game at any moment. The goal we conceded was an example of that. And you can see why they're effective in their league. And they have probably two players in each position, if not three, that can do that in terms of their talent. They invest a lot and they've been historically winning championships in the league. But like I said, I thought we matched them well. We did need a collective effort to shut down those individuals, and I thought we did that for most of the game, with the exception of the one player that led to the goal. So, and we created chances that, Guzman made some good saves in some moments. So I think we could have challenged him a little bit more in taking our chances. But they have some special talent. So, and we knew we have really good individual players as well. We have young players that are still developing. Christian Espinosa just resigned. We're really happy to get his commitment for the next few years for this community, this club, these fans, for him, his family. That's awesome. But we want to focus on our collective talent, not individual. And I'm proud of our collective effort tonight.
Coach, I know you'd rather be planning for the knockout rounds, but what do you plan on, or how do you plan on using this time off that you guys are going to have, which is rare? A lot of players have been talking about a little bit of burnout. What do you hope to tweak, especially with the new player coming into it?
Yeah, we gave the guys a few weeks ago an extended moment break because we had that opportunity. We would have liked to continue an intense schedule in the League's Cup. Unfortunately, we're going to definitely have to pivot, and we got to focus in the next 2.5, 3 weeks before we play Vancouver. We'll business as usual. We're gonna get back to training. Tuesday will be a regen/training. We'll do it like an inner squad by the end of the week. We will give an extended weekend off. We'll give another extended period off for the guys, like you said, to give them a mental break more than just physical break. But then we'll do a normal 2-week microcycle going into Vancouver. So that would be the plan. And we want to do probably some team activities as well, maybe even off the field, because we have a great group, a great locker room, a family-oriented group, and just continue to give them opportunities to build bonds away from the game. I think we can have some good moments of that as well.
Buenas noches, Paola Marucci, Show Internacional, 10 AM, Estación de Radio San Francisco. Mi pregunta es, independientemente del resultado, la importancia de esta experiencia para la MLS y para el equipo y jugadores que nunca se han enfrentado a equipos como Tigres. Gracias.
Sí, hola Paola. Buenísimo esta copa, buenísima idea para crear competición entre MLS y Liga MX. Ambos ligas empujando uno al otro, jugar como esta noche con fanatismo de los dos clubes para una competición, no amistoso. Siempre hemos jugado partidos amistosos, pero para jugar una competición contra un equipo de Liga MX hace a nosotros crecer, mejorar en la competición y lo abrazamos. Y me encanta este torneo, me encanta esta copa, que lo siguen haciendo por muchos años y que lo mejoran hasta más, pero lástima que no continuamos en esto, pero nosotros nos gusta mucho esta oportunidad y esta experiencia.
Pleasure to talk to you, as always. Akinola made his debut today. How is he fitting in with the squad? What impressions did he give on today?
Look, I thought, Ayo is still needing integration, right? He's only trained maybe 3 times with the group. He had been getting continuous training and play with Toronto. He's adapting to San Jose now, the way we train, our intensity, our game model, the locker room. So that's going to take time. So these next few weeks will be really good for him. But look, I think he already showed he's got some physical qualities in terms of hold up, turning defenders, and he gets a shot on top of the box that he created for himself, and if he puts that on target, I think that's really dangerous. He's got power, speed. He can play centrally. He's a center forward. He can play on the wing. He's versatile. So I think, and he's young. He's young, and he has a lot of room to still improve. So seems like a good guy, good young man, and I think he's going to be a good addition to what we need in our depth to compete the rest of the season.
Well, yes, it was a decade ago, the last time Quakes were in the CONCACAF Champions League, and the last time the high stakes game between San Jose and Quakes and a Liga MX opponent. So even though this is a different competition, do you feel like the energy was fitting of an encounter between the 2 teams represented different leagues and a different challenge?
Yeah, look, we made it really clear our ambition in Leagues Cup. We wanted to win this thing, because historically this club has not won an international cup. We wanted to write our own name in history, and this was the opportunity, and it will be the opportunity in the future. So we're hopeful of that. We just got to wait till next year. Some lack of fortune in terms of the draw, right? Like we had to play at Portland and then home at Tigres. Those are 2 very challenging games, and you see some of these other teams playing maybe even both games at home, right? And so there's big advantages in that. And then, I'd say Tigres is not your typical Liga MX team. It's a very talented team. And as you saw, with one of the best Liga MX center forwards in the history of the league with Gignac. So, whatever. It was going to be a tough group to get out of, but I thought we did a lot of good things. We're going to learn. We want to get better every day. We want to get better. So we'll do our analysis, reflection, and take it out on MLS now.
Thank you.
We'll go now to questions from our media on Zoom. Alex Morgan, go ahead.
Yeah, potentially. We historically in this season have not started with 2 center forwards. We want to have numbers in the midfield. We want to have numbers on the back line and true wingers. So, and we've had pretty good production with that foundation. But at the end of a game, not even at the end. I mean, we did it with 20 plus minutes left, but we needed to push. We needed goals, and we needed to do it one moment and one goal at a time. But yeah, that was the idea. So we ended in a 3-5-2. Still maintaining numbers in the midfield, having wing play, wide play, still having the ability to defend the back line in transition, but have 2 guys with physical presence in and around the box. And so that was the idea. And I thought it was interesting. We did get on the ball. We created those wide overloads. We got balls in the box. There was even one, I think Christian had that isolation wide. It was a quick attack. And I think Ayo made a hard sprint between the center backs to the back post. Had we got that ball in a little quicker in an early crossing. So I thought it was an interesting dynamic just to stress their back line. And Unfortunately, we didn't score, but I thought it was dangerous.
Last question will go to Brian on Zoom. Brian, go ahead.
Hey there. As you alluded to a couple times in this conference, you're playing one of the best teams that you can find in this hemisphere. Does that make you, the way that you, except for one moment in the first half, you pretty well stood toe-to-toe with them? Does that make you feel better about the rest of the season going forward?
Yeah, look, it's definitely a good reference when you can have a high-level performance against a high-level team, and use that as an example of what our potential is in terms of gameplay, right? Like our mission as a team from preseason has been we want our fans and our families to admire the way we act and the way we play, and I think we can be proud of that tonight in how we acted and how we played, and pushing the game. You know, we had more shots than them. We created a good XG against a very good team. So, yeah, that is definitely something we want to grab and be proud of. At the same time, one of our main values is like compete. We can beat anybody. And I thought we showed the attitude and personality of that, but we didn't get it done, so we're disappointed with that. We're not happy. We're not satisfied. We're gonna be sour for the next 2 weeks. We have to train now without a competition for the next few weeks. So we're going to be pretty bitter about that. But like I said, we'll get over it. We'll move forward, and we'll know that we can beat anybody, and we got to apply it in the next opportunity against anybody.
And with that, we conclude some of the Earthquakes post-game press conference. Thank you so much, Coach Luchi, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
A lot of interesting stuff there, Alex, in terms of answering the questions about Ayo Akinola. I mean, you went right for it, which is kind of what I was interested in, looking at the different formation opportunities that Luchi has with the team, with the squad. But one thing that I found interesting is he talked particularly about the end of the match being the time in which we could see the 3-5-2, maybe when you're chasing a lead or when you need just something to switch in order to put the other team on the back hill. What are your thoughts about that? Because my feeling is that this is a great opportunity for the squad to possibly have that sort of formation at the beginning of a match as well. Do you see this as an opportunity for the team to have a different look from beginning to end, or is it more so, as Luchi said, do you think that seeing Ayo in there in a 2-striker formation with Jeremy Abobasi is at best kept to the end of the match when you're chasing a lead?
I think that's a formation that you use when you're chasing the lead at the end of the match, when you want 2 strikers who are pressing the center backs and making it impossible for them to build out of the back, and when you're putting in a lot of crosses. Because realistically, you can't press that way from the beginning of the game. And I don't think that Ayo Akinola has proven enough to be a starter up top yet. I think it's that formation that we saw looked good, but is best used at the end of the game. And I think Luchi Gonzalez has earned my trust. I definitely trust him to make the adjustments that he needs in game and ahead of each game in order for this team to succeed, because we've seen them adapt and evolve at multiple stages throughout this season. We saw them a few weeks ago adjust to some of the absences and play with the 3-5-2 that's kind of lopsided with Paul Marie playing very high up the field and Carlos Acapo on the other side dropping deeper. We've seen them play in the 4-2-3-1 that he likes, and I trust. And we've seen him also make adjustments in the middle of the game, switch back and forth between the two in the middle of the game as needed. So I trust that he will do that well, and I think that his in-game management is really solid. But no, I don't think that this is something that you throw out in the first game back against Vancouver right at the top of the 90 minutes.
So I have a couple other thoughts as we kind of like round things out as we, we're done with the press conference now. One thing is I wanted to talk about sort of the approach that the team took in this tournament just a little bit more. You could tell that Luchi was very disappointed in the result, the score at the end, but not in the amount of effort that the team put forward. In fact, when he's talking about the mental rest, the mental break, the team coming back together, he said, we have a good squad. It sounds like there's a lot of positivity moving forward in terms of the squad itself. He also mentioned the collective over the individual, right? This is something that he said throughout the season. So I found that to be a really interesting point, that's something that's at the front of his mind. So I think it sounded to me like he's proud of the performance that they put in, given the draw that they got, having to play on the road against the Portland Timbers, having to play against Tigres at home, which is an incredibly difficult draw in this competition. I mean, what is your take on this?
I think it feels almost like a missed opportunity, because I think that it's very clear looking across the league how fun and exciting these games can be, how much intensity there is, how much rivalry there is. Gignac is a guy who was a few months ago talking smack about Major League Soccer, and there was a lot of highlights on his comments about Liga MX being a better league and being having better competition there. And I think that we've seen across the board very good battles between Liga MX teams and Major League Soccer teams. It feels like a missed opportunity for the Quakes, because it feels like they barely even got to participate in that. Right? They go to Portland last week, they lose 2-0, and then the Portland Tigres game happened. And the results worked out such that the Quakes were barely in it in this game from the top. They needed to overcome a 2-goal deficit. With the early goal, inside of 20 minutes, their Leagues Cup experience, real kind of competitive games against a Liga MX team is only 20 minutes long. And that's a disappointing outcome, because you could feel the intensity at the start of the game. You can see it happening across the league. And, I wish the Quakes would have been able to really.
And I think the Quakes did have that intensity throughout the match. I think we saw it there. There was a lot of fight, like even going all the way through to the end. They continued to try to make those opportunities. We saw the counterattack. We saw each player, trying to create those opportunities in front of goal. But this is just a reminder, once again, that, the teams in MLS that do best against Liga MX teams are the ones that have the strong starting 11 and the strong depth as well. If you've watched the CONCACAF competitions over the years, folks, the one major difference between Liga MX and Major League Soccer isn't necessarily the starting 11. I think MLS for a long time has had starting 11 squads that could compete with Liga MX squads. But at the end of the match, when you talk about stamina, when you talk about like that fight and the players coming off the bench, it's always been Liga MX. And that's why these MLS squads have had such a hard time getting any trophies in these CONCACAF competitions. So I'm not necessarily surprised that we saw this from the Quakes. I mean, we've talked about that need to have better depth for this squad, but I am excited to see some of these other teams in Major League Soccer who are starting to create that. And they are going to be competing a lot more against these Liga MX squads. So there's a lot to look forward to in terms of the tournament. Obviously, as Quakes fans, it's disappointing not to see the team go farther than the 20 minutes that you just mentioned, and being competitive and having that hope for the tournament. But I think there's a lot of things to look forward to. And look, there's also the player that we haven't mentioned, right, who scored the free kick goal against Cruz Azul at the end of that match for Inter Miami. So there is a lot to look forward to.
And there is one thing that I want to highlight, though, because Chris Leach actually did talk about these depth issues when we spoke to him. Me and Jamin spoke to him at midweek. He said that he thinks Major League Soccer actually should be redesigning the roster rules or adjusting the roster rules to account for this extra load, because they have already a full slate of 34 games this season, and they're adding 2 more games, maybe 3, 4 for teams that are advancing to the next rounds on top of that, on top of the U.S. Open Cup. And this is straining Major League Soccer teams and rosters, is what he said. And he said if it's adding another roster slot, if it's adding more room in the cap, there should be some adjustments to account for this added load. And I think that's probably a pretty widely shared sentiment across the board for Major League Soccer GMs. And I think that's already pretty popular, is an expansion of or relaxing of some of these roster rules. I think lots of Major League Soccer teams have been pushing for that. And look, if you have that, then you have less of these depth issues where you see Liga MX teams who are bringing in, insanely talented players.
They just have more money. They're spending more on their players who are on the bench. I mean, that's the difference, right? And I don't know how that looks for Major League Soccer, whether that's giving more like GAM to the team so that they can use those funds to pay for those players who are playing on the bench, just so that they have like more talent. To me, it's just a matter of the spending, right? And for years and years, Liga MX has been a competition, a league that has had more spending in comparison to a lot of the other leagues in the region. But Major League Soccer is certainly getting up to their standard, right? I think we're seeing that. So, Alex, one other thing I wanted to talk about in this match is the actual environment. Usually we start off the show talking about the environment, especially when we're broadcasting from the stadium. I know walking up to the stadium, I saw a lot of yellow jerseys. The Tigres fans all over. But once folks got settled in, I thought it was actually pretty well split, if not even more Quakes fans than Tigres fans. I mean, the Ultras showed up very well tonight. They were loud, they were thunderous, they provided great support for the team. They were certainly louder than the Tigres fans, with the exception of the fact when there was like general reactions or general chanting, right? So throughout, you would hear the Seismic Union and the Ultras, and they were creating the environment. But there were also the times in which the Tigres fans would have louder reactions to the plays on the field, given that they oftentimes, in general, might be more active as fans than we would see from Quakes fans. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But overall, I thought the Quakes fans turned out pretty well tonight. What do you think?
So I'm going to contrast this to the game that the Quakes had against Club America. A few years back, which was essentially an away game.
It was an away game for sure.
This was not that. This was not as sort of Tigres heavy turnout that I was expecting. It actually felt like, if anything, Quakes fans turned up more.
Yes.
Anticipating that Tigres would have a good show out and trying to match that. And it was announced as a sellout, which is I think one of the first that we've had this season. And it was a good atmosphere, and I think
it was great.
I was surprised by that, given the way that the game played out, given the fact that the Quakes allowed an early goal and were essentially knocked out of the tournament after 20 minutes. I was worried or fearing that the atmosphere would dissipate after that moment.
Yeah.
But it didn't, and I think in part because everyone was excited to see these two teams benchmark against each other beyond the kind of Leagues Cup advancement. I think that the fans were invested in the concept of which league is better, Liga MX or Major League Soccer.
No, it was really cool. And I think for the most part, like, the crowd was pretty well behaved. I know that's been like an issue when we have Mexican teams playing here at PayPal Park. We've seen that in the past. There's enhanced security, for example. We definitely saw that in the Cruz Azul game. We saw that in the Club America game. But tonight it was actually, for the most part, really great. I mean, there were some objects that were thrown onto the field by one of the Quake supporter sections at one point, but they did go on the announcers did go on the loudspeakers, and they announced, they told the fans not to do that, and I would assume that it improved. I didn't notice it as much afterward. But overall, I thought it was great. They had the players read the statements at the beginning of the match, asking them not to say anything that's inappropriate.
And there were no
chants,
issues with the goal kick chant.
Exactly. And so, there were a lot of good things happening, I thought, throughout the match. The environment felt positive and vibrant. And yes, it was like a healthy back and forth between Tigres and the Quakes. And I just thought it was a really good showing. And it did feel a lot better than we had seen in the past. So overall, I thought it was a great environment.
Now, in past summers, we've seen the Quakes play actual friendly matches in the summer against big European teams. Manchester United a few years ago. I like competitive games like these better, where you get new audience in, where you get big names in, big stars in, but there is something to play for, and the Quakes are playing their starting 11.
So that's the other factor, right?
Something invested in the game.
And
I
awesome.
like that.
Yeah.
And then you still have, La Liga teams coming to San Francisco and other,
of course, that's going to
European soccer in the Bay Area this summer.
Yeah, but overall, great environment. I thought it was a great match. It was a great showing for the city of San Jose, for the Quakes fans and for the Tigres fans too. Like, I thought it was really cool that they came out and supported the team, and it just felt like a great environment. It was a good back and forth. So
yeah, 100%. Phil, I think you have some advertisements to make.
Yeah. So folks, you can find our content not only here on YouTube, where you should like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can join us after every single match, and during the week for when we have our I don't know what you want to call them, like the Colin Etnier video about Ayo Akinola.
Specials.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have a name for them.
Our live
mini
hits.
shakes. I don't know. But all of our content on the YouTube channel, make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can see it. Visit us at quakesepicenter.com, where you can find our articles, the salary spreadsheet, which also is done by Colin Etnier, and the Quakes Epicenter Patreon. For just a couple dollars a month, you can get early access to our articles and videos that we promote there on the website. And for $5 a month, you can also get access to the Quakes Epicenter Slack, which Alex and I were both on tonight, chatting it up with the fans who are patrons. and contribute at least $5 a month to the Patreon. So make sure you go check those out. Again, quakesepicenter.com, and follow us on social media at Quakes Epicenter on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. Are people still using Twitter?
It's
Alex?
X now. You have to call it X.
I'm not even on there. I do not go on there anymore. I cannot stand
And
it.
so here's the other pitch for the patron Slack. The other pitch is that Jamin Moore is always on the patron Slack, lurking somewhere. He was not able to be on the Aftershock tonight because he is in Texas on a family trip. And I wasn't expecting to hear from Jamin all night. And yet Jamin Moore appears in the Slack channel and is following along and is giving all of his hot takes that you miss on the show, all of the arguments that we have on the show. That's happening in the Slack channel.
Yeah, it's a little too amicable. I think the nice thing about having Jamin is listening to you guys argue back and forth. So that's a lot of fun. But, it's nice being here with you, Alex. It's been a good time.
Absolutely. Now I want to throw it back to you, Phil, for your final thoughts on this game, what you're taking away from this game, what your positives are, what your weaknesses are.
I realized that Tigres was more of the dominant team in this match, but let's take a look at the scoreline here. I mean, this is a 1-0 loss. We saw much worse losses for other MLS squads against the Liga MX talent in this competition in the Leagues Cup. And so overall, although it's not a win on the score sheet, I think this is a win for the San Jose Earthquakes in terms of the Liga MX fans coming here, getting the PayPal Park experience, getting to see the Quakes, a lot of it at their best with some of their best players on the field. We got to see some razzle dazzle from Christian Espinoza and Jeremy Abobasi at times. And even Jimerel Montero was not as... Look, man, we've already talked enough about Jimerel Montero and his performance.
There were some commentators who were defending Jameer Montero's first half performance tonight. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of. Yeah, if you're trying to voice those feelings, you have.
That's exactly what that is. I think that Jimerel Montero showed well in some moments, but overall, it's not a performance to necessarily get excited about, especially when he occupies a designated player slot. Which again, go check out Colin's video on Ayo Akinola. He talks a little bit about that as well over at quakesepicenter.com or on the YouTube channel here. So, but I had a great time here at the game. It was cool seeing a Liga MX squad come in, and in a competition that matters, right? This wasn't just an exhibition. This was a game that had meaning to it, and you could feel it from both sides. And so again, a healthy environment, back and forth, a lot of fun, boos and jeers and cheers and everything in between. So overall, a great match. And Alex, I'm going to kick it over to you and let you finish off the show tonight.
Yeah, there's no shame in losing to Tigres, who are one of the best teams in Liga MX. I think that there is a little bit of regret in the way that the game played out. And I think that Luchi Gonzalez would have thought that the Quakes, given the way that they were attacking and given the way that they were able to find some space in behind, could have done, made it more difficult for Tigres and could have, gotten the first goal. And if they get the first goal, then I think it's an entirely different game. It just felt like this one, after that first goal went in the wrong direction for the Quakes. And after that, it was a knockout blow.
Yeah.
They weren't able to recover. They weren't beaten, 4-2 like the Seattle Sounders were earlier today. So they walk away with their dignity, but definitely a sense that next year they have unfinished business in the Leagues Cup, that if they play a Liga MX team first, it would be a more intense game, would be a more intense atmosphere, and that there's something that they're still missing out.
And to be clear too, like the Quakes played one of the better teams in Liga MX. They played one of the historically and also presently like one of the better teams. Like they didn't play Necaxa or like one of these smaller clubs that is also playing in the Leagues Cup. They drew one of the better teams, I think, like somebody said in the press conference, in the hemisphere. And it's a 1-0 loss, and in a match in which they definitely could have gone to penalties, or possibly even won by a goal.
And so now for me, Phil, my eyes are all on the transfer window and Chris Leach. For these next 3 weeks, there's 3 weeks before the San Jose Earthquakes play next against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Luchi Gonzalez talked a little bit how they're going to take a little break and then start with the normal 2-week cycle heading into that match. But the question is, can they bring in another player who can make this team better? Can they secure a transfer for Cade Cowell, for Benji Kikanovic, for Jameer Montero, for JT Marcinkowski, and use those funds to bring in a marquee left winger? Or are they stuck with this roster for the rest of the season? And we know what this roster can do. Mm-hmm. We know that this roster can make the playoffs. We know that this roster can be a very good team at home. And I think we also know the limitations of this roster, which is that they need more goals. and they are lacking in production on that left wing and in that number 10 position, and they'll probably struggle if they finish 7th or 8th to get out of that first round or the playoff play-in game in the playoffs. So we know they can make the playoffs, but the next question is, can they do more than that? Can they make a run for the Western Conference semifinals or Western Conference finals? And I firmly believe that if they get the marquee player that they need, they can do that. And so that's the pitch, right? That's the pitch to John Fisher to spend money. That's the kind of motivation for Chris Leach in this remaining few weeks of the transfer window, is that they have a little bit of space to make a move happen here. And if they do, it'll have an extremely high, I think, potential return on investment here. The marginal impact here, I think, is really, really large for this team at this stage. And so all eyes are on the transfer window for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well said. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Again, visit us at quakesepicenter.com. Make sure to follow us on social media at Quakes Epicenter. We hope you all have a good night.